Well, we've made it, friends. Dudek Dave here, and it is time for A, and A stands for the Allman Brothers Band. Everybody knows one of my favorite bands of all time. Saw them 4 times in 1973, and many, many times after that, including RFK Stadium was one of the shows in 73 with the Grateful Dead, and then at the Beacon many, many times. I've seen them in New Jersey. I never saw them in the Midwest, I don't think. So, the Brothers, yes. This was their 4th studio album on Capricorn Records, their own label with, kind of their own label with Phil Walden. They were their biggest act after sitting by the dock of the bay, passed away. Otis Redding, he was the big star in Macon, Georgia at the time. The Allman Brothers quickly became the draw. So let's get into the album. 1973 studio album. What was going on in the album and in the band? What went on with the album went on with the band a lot. The first 2 songs, Wasted Words and Ramblin Man, which was the big hit from the album. By the way, this went #1. It went platinum. It's the biggest selling album it was at that time. I mean, Fillmore East was probably, was a bigger critical success, and certainly over time is considered their classic with, the playing from Duane Allman and Barry Oakley. This is a band in transition, is what I'm trying to say. First 2 cuts had Barry Oakley, the bass player, on it. This is actually Barry's son, Vaylor Oakley, and then Trucks' daughter on the back, the brothers and sisters, very cute. And then if anybody's ever seen, I'm sure a lot of you have seen, music from Big Pink, the classic first album by the band. By the way, they were strongly considered for B, and I will do a band album. I want to do Rock of Ages, which is their terrific live album from 1971. The inside, really, of the family, the Allman family, and they are a family of all the roadies, all the wives, the kids, is very much like the next of kin inside the band's music from Big Pink. 73, played with the Grateful Dead, also played with the band after the RFK Stadium gig at Watkins Glen, which to that point was the largest concert of its time. I think they expected 150, 200,000. They got 660 was the count that it said on Wikipedia. They stopped taking tickets. Very wild time. Wish I had seen Watkins Glen, but I was in Europe that summer, so couldn't make it. But I did see RFK with the brothers in the band. The brothers headlined Saturday night, and I actually thought, I love the Grateful Dead. Everybody knows that's probably my favorite band. But I think the Allman set Saturday night was probably the best of the 4 sets. There was the Dead opening up for the Allmans that night. There was Wet Willie and also Doug Somm Band that weekend. And the second night, the Allmans opened. They were great Sunday, and then the Dead came, and then they jammed for a 5th set, which was incredible, with Gregg, with J-Mo, with Butch Trucks. I don't think J-Mo was on. I think it was Butch and Gregg and Dickey. Jamming with Merle Saunders and Garcia and members of the Dead. All right, so let's get into this. I listened to the first side right before the review, and I have to say, I think my favorite song on the album is Come and Go Blues, which Gregg Allman also did on Laid Back. By the way, he was also recording his solo album. Dickey soon recorded his Highway Call, his first solo album. So I say the band was a band in transition. The Allman Brothers go back. You see my shirt. This was the 40th anniversary shirt for 2009 to 1969 when they were formed. Out of the ashes of the 31st of February, the Hourglass, Gregg and Duane Allman. They had a bunch of different, Second Coming. There were about 4 different bands that they picked everybody from. But when they sat down to jam, those 6 guys they never looked back. It was a done deal. It was Dwayne's band all the way. Dwayne, as everybody probably knows, was sadly killed in a motorcycle crash in 1971. They released Eat a Peach in 72, which had mostly Dwayne on it, had some Dickey with the band, had some live stuff from the Fillmore left over, including the Great Mountain Jam, One Way Out. Terrific album, Eat a Peach. I want to do a review on that. It's one of my faves too. But this was the first album of new stuff with the new band. And the big addition was they decided, which was really revolutionary at the time, if you think about it, they put a keyboard player in for the second guitarist. I mean, even the Stones had Mick Taylor for Brian Jones. Interestingly enough, little sidebar, Chuck Leavell, who played piano on this and played with the Allmans for a good, after this stint with Leavell, his side band, by the 80s, he was out. He went to join the Rolling Stones, which I found out today and did not know was the largest grossing act of anybody in the world. So I digress. Gregg Allman on organ and keyboards. Chuck Leavell on electric piano and keyboards. J-Mo on drums, along with Butch, the great Butch Trucks. Derek Trucks, we know, took over later, way after this album. I don't think he had been born by this point, which is Butch Trucks' nephew. Dickey, the great Dickey Betts, who does Ramblin Man and also does Pony Boy, took over as kind of the de facto leader. Gregg had a lot of things going on. This is right before the Cher fiasco, at least for Allman Brothers fans. So there was a lot going on in the band. There were drugs, there were roadie fights backstage. They got dosed at the Dead show. I was reading all about that. So a lot of stuff going on. One more side note on what was going on at this time. Anybody that's seen Almost Famous, which was just made into a Broadway play, the band Sweetwater and Almost Famous, this band, the 73 tour with Dickey Betts, was kind of the lead guy in that. Interestingly enough, not Gregg, who had also always been in the limelight. Wasted Words, Ramblin Man, Southbound, Jessica, Come and Go, Blues, Pony Boy. There is not a bad song on this album. There's a reason that it sold so well. It's a reason that they toured the you-know-what out of it, the F out of it. It's awesome. There's a live album of this tour. Wipe the Windows, Dollar Gas, Check the Oil, Bill Graham, had them go, back up. When the Allmans started, before they even got their first record contract, they were the house band at the Fillmore East. The Grateful Dead were the house band at the Fillmore West. Unofficial. They played probably more, at those venues, and then Winterland that Bill took over after the Fillmore's closed, than any place else. In 73, or was it 74? I guess 74, after the Dead did their hiatus, they played, I think it was actually the Cow Palace, the New Year's show, and Jerry showed up. All right, so I digress. I have a lot of Grateful Dead, Allman Brothers connections. I mean, both rooted in the blues. By the way, Grateful Dead news, we had the 50th passing on March 8th of Pigpen, the great Ron McKernan, one of the original founding members of the Grateful Dead, a frontman, bluesman, harp man, keyboard man, and really brought a lot of soul and great songwriting. Operators, probably my favorite, Pigpen, but there's Smokestack Lightning, off of Bear's Choice, etc., etc. Okay, let's get into this. I think George Marino, I'll show you my album copy of this. George Marino worked on this. I was looking at the liner notes. Comes with a nice insert. I love these inserts. I spent many hours perusing these inserts, looking for keys to this great music when it came out. Dedicated to a brother, Barry Oakley. And George Marino at the record plant in New York was the mastering engineer. So I think it's a great sounding record in my opinion. Jelly Jelly, which was actually left off of this sheet. If you see, it's Early Morning Blues. It's not Jelly Jelly, but they changed Early Morning Blues to Jelly Jelly, the Billy Eckstine number. And Earl Father Hines is credited as well. Recorded at Capricorn Sound Studios, Macon, Georgia, which was the Allman's home turf. I mean, you had the Dead and the Dead family in San Francisco. You had the Allmans and the Allman family in Macon. After the success of really triple albums, Eat a Peach, before that Live at the Fillmore, because Idlewild South and the first album, eponymously titled, really didn't do that well. It was really Fillmore East that put them on the map and that they were a live band. Then Eat a Peach with Dwayne's death went through the roof, which was really sad because that was their biggest selling album. And then this one with a hit single, The Ramblin' Man, a more country. Dickey had his influences, but Gregg with his blues, the double drummers. They replaced the bass, the keyboards, as I mentioned. They also brought in one more thing I want to mention before I show you the album, the label, and my CD copy, is they brought in 2 other guitarists on this album. Les Dudek, fantastic Southern rock guitarist. Here's side 2, and here's side 1 on the original Capricorn. I believe this is a 73 pressing. I put it in my Discogs. And I have my sleeve for it, which I haven't for all my, I have to get caught up on that because I have quite a few records to get through on that. What was I saying? Where was I? Before I interrupted myself. Just dynamic band, great live, incredible. 2 quick stories about the Allmans. Here's the CD version on with the family on the back. When one of the first times that the Grateful Dead and the Allman Brothers played together at the Fillmore East that I know about was February 1970. And Owsley was recording the show for the Dead, some of the performances from that, 13th and 14th February, I believe. Owsley Stanley, the famous sound guy that I talked about in my Grateful Dead reviews, and also, of course, the purveyor of acid, Kid Charlemagne on Royal Scam. I have a story about that when I do the Royal Scam review. Hopefully I'll do a Royal Scam review because I love Steely Dan as well. Owsley saw the setup. The Allmans were going on first, and he saw the double drums, and he said, I like these guys. And Owsley actually ended up recording that. I have a bootleg. It's not really a bootleg. It was released commercially. But at the time, it was kind of a bootleg of that show. And then he recorded the Dead show as well. February 13th, 14th, 1970. Bear's Choice. Later, that was 70 was when they were doing the acoustic sets as well. Can you imagine a set of the Allman Brothers and then followed by acoustic Dead and 2 sets of electric Dead? I mean, that's pretty close to Nirvana. So what else I want to say about Brothers and Sisters? We are at A. We've wrapped up our alphabet, guys. Good job. What else do I want to say about the Allmans? Another story. The drummers. Dickey. Okay, yes. One more quick story before I sign up. Oh, wow, this is a long one. Dickey Betts. It was at the New Jersey Fairgrounds. I saw him at Roosevelt, and I saw him at the Jersey Fairgrounds in 73. And maybe it was in the 74. I took the Roosevelt gig, might have been 74. Anyway, the 73 gig was September. I remember Dickey Betts. It was a New Jersey Fairground, so it was a huge speedway, kind of like, like Altamont, like Watkins Glen. The concerts were getting so big that they were going out of the football stadiums and actually going to, to motor speedways, which had started earlier, and the Allman Brothers are no stranger to that. They'd done the Atlanta Pop Festival, I believe that, and the Texas Pop Festival, which I believe were at speedways. So Dickey's just wailing on Jessica, and I swear he probably played it for almost 40 minutes. It was incredible. I'm running really late on this. So a very quick one, wrap up. A for the Allman Brothers, 4th album, Brothers and Sisters, on Capricorn Records. Fantastic album. Get it on vinyl. If you don't have it, you'll love it. We are at A. Jessica was inspired by Django Reinhardt, the great jazz gypsy guitarist. And Django Reinhardt had burned his hand, so he could only play with 2 fingers. Amazing what he was doing. When his group with the Hot Club of France, Django Reinhardt on violin, amazing. I have a vinyl on that I'll try to dig out and do. So this is where I'm transitioning. Dickey was a big fan of Django Reinhardt. I mean, these guys, Dwayne loved Coltrane. You see where their influences are. J-Mo was a jazz drummer. Bill Kreutzmann was a jazz drummer, which is where I'm going. What I'd like to do is go back through the alphabet, A through Z, and do jazz. So we're going to try to do that with A. I think I know who I'm going to do for A. He's a guitarist. His first name is Ralph, and he starts with A. So we're going to try that, okay? All right, guys. Have a great one. Keep on spinning. Sorry, this one ran a little long. Doodah Dave signing out. Allman Brothers coming at ya.